Hello everyone. So I had a little bit of difficulty kind of exploring what the basal ganglia actually looked like, and because it's a very 3D structure. And so I thought a good thing to do would be to kind of go through a 3D model of what the basal ganglia look like, and then look at some 2D cross sections, kind of like what Gensler was doing with us tonight. So this is an iPad app that's free that has the brain in it, so I would recommend it. You can spin it, and let's look at exactly where the basal ganglia is. So there's the basal ganglia in all of its glory. It's pink here. And so what are the different parts? We have the caudate nucleus, which is this purple thing that spins around like this. This here would be the head of the caudate nucleus, and so that would be the head. This would be the body and the tail, although those are not really functional definitions. The globus pallidus is this underneath structure, so you can see it right here underneath the putamen. And then at the end of the tail of the caudate nucleus, we have the amygdala, which is not highlighted here. And then underneath this all, we have the subthalamic nucleus and the substantia nigra. Let's zoom in a little bit on these. So here we can see a better view of the globus pallidus. And we can see that there are actually two. There's an internal globus pallidus, an external globus pallidus, and then here we can see the putamen. Putamen. This is the caudate nucleus again, and then this is a chunk of the caudate nucleus called the nucleus accumbens. So I think this, oh, whoops, that's my friend. I think this is a pretty good way to kind of learn how this stuff looks and kind of where it's situated. And remember, these aren't, real structures. They don't look purple, and they're just collections of gray matter. So now let's look at what this might look like. Oh, before I talk about that, actually, I wanted to talk about where the internal capsule is, because I had a hard time figuring that out. So what all the books describe is that they say that the interior capsule separates the thalamus from the lentiform nucleus. The lentiform nucleus is the putamen and the globus pallidus together. So it's this chunk. This is the lentiform nucleus right here, and on both sides. So there are two lentiform nuclei, and so the internal capsule separates the lentiform nucleus, this chunk, from the caudate anteriorly. So I'm going to use blue to represent the internal capsule, and we can think of it running in and out of the screen here. So it would separate the head anteriorly, the head of the caudate nucleus from the lentiform nucleus, and separates it from the thalamus posteriorly. And we're going to be able to see that better in cross sections here. But you can imagine how there's this white fiber running through it. So here's another good view. So we're looking at a coronal section, and here is the ventrolateral nucleus of the thalamus. So here's the thalamus in the center of the brain, and here is where we can see the basal ganglia, this area here. So I'm going to clear this. Is basal ganglia, this is the caudate nucleus, this is the putamen, and this is the globus pallidus, with this being the internal segment and this being the external segment. This is the substantia nigra, and this is the subthalamic nucleus. So you can imagine that this area here would be, one second, this area here is the internal capsule, separating the lentiform nucleus, this stuff, from the thalamus, and separating the lentiform nucleus from the caudate head anteriorly. The caudate nucleus and the putamen together are also called the striatum. Yeah. Now we can look at a axial view. This is from Netters. I really like this. And here we can see, so these are two different cuts. A is more superficial, so B is a deeper cut. And so in A, what we can see is the head of the caudate nucleus. So this is, oh, sorry, I want to get a different pen here. This is the head of the caudate nucleus, and this is the head of the caudate nucleus. And so this would be the putamen, and then this is the globus pallidus, with again the internal segment and the external segment here. And so then here is the tail of the caudate nucleus. So what you can imagine is coming out of the plane, we have the tail, and it's going over here and then connecting to the head, right? So if we were to take an axial cut higher up from here, maybe a centimeter more, then this whole area would be gray matter. That would be the, I guess, body of the caudate nucleus. And then we can see the internal capsule here, which I'll do in a different color. So this whole area is internal capsule, and you can see what I'm saying about how anteriorly the internal capsule separates the lentiform nucleus, this area, these two structures combined, from the head of the caudate nucleus, and posteriorly it separates the lentiform capsule from the thalamus. So I hope that this makes some sense. It's difficult to get, and it took me a long time, but I'm just not good spatially. This image also has a separate image that shows where the cuts were made. So this is the A cut, this is the B cut, and this is where they come through and cut in the basal ganglia. So you can see what I'm talking about how when we're seeing the head of the caudate right here and the tail of the caudate, we're just getting that slice. So this is the tail, this is the head, so we're just seeing this slice here and slice here. So I think that's pretty cool. And then to take, here, this is one more view, and then we'll talk about vasculature. So I really like this. This is from the Neuroanatomy Through Clinical Cases. And so we're looking at a lateral view. This is anterior, this is posterior, and what you can see is the putamen, and it is covered with this internal capsule is coming through all these holes in the cellular bridges, right? And then in dashed line in the back, you can see the caudate nucleus. So here's the tail, here's the amygdala, here's the head of the caudate nucleus, and then you can see the globus pallidus, or globus pallidus, and the thalamus in orange. So here, I think this is a good view. So the putamen is the most lateral structure here, and we can switch back and forth here. So here's the putamen again. And then if we were to remove the putamen, we would reveal the globus pallidus, and so they're showing this. Here the temporal lobe is transparent. So this line this line here is not really there. That's just the outline of the temporal lobe. And then the pink is the globus pallidus, the external segment, and then the darkened part is lying behind the page, and that's the internal segment. And here you can also see what I'm talking about the internal capsule. So anteriorly, the internal capsule separates the lentiform nucleus, which is the putamen, which we just removed, and the globus pallidus from the head of the caudate. So here's the head of the caudate, and so it's behind the internal capsule here, and then truly there. And so you get this area of internal capsule is separating these two structures, whereas the thalamus is in this orange color behind here, and so this area of the internal capsule is separating the lentiform nucleus from the thalamus. And then if we were to remove the globus pallidus, we would be able to just see the whole, and this is all internal capsule. And this actually looks a lot kind of like the photo or the diagram that Gensler was showing us of all the different colored axons protruding. So that's a good thing. And then if we were to remove the internal capsule, we would see the structures underlying them. Yeah. So we're not really clearly able to see where the different structures of the basal ganglia are here, but this would be the caudate nucleus, and then somewhere around here would be the putamen, the external globus pallidus, and the internal globus pallidus. And these arteries here, the lenticulostriate arteries, are some of the most commonly damaged arteries in hypertensive disease. So if these were damaged in our patient, then we would have loss of function in the basal ganglia, and which could explain some of our symptoms. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.